Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Where's Fielder? He's gone to the dogs.
Hey, welcome once again to the Gone to the Dogs podcast. This is Steve Fielder, your host, coming at you here from the sauna in the great state of Florida on the West Coast, about 20 miles north of Tampa. And you could very intelligently ask, what in the heck is a coon hunter doing down there? Well, I tell you, at this time of year, you got to figure he's lost his mind, number one. But this is where I live, and everybody's got to be someplace, right? Somebody told me one time, said, no matter where you go, there you are. So this is where I am. And man, I'm going to introduce you to a fellow that I haven't known very long, but I've always enjoyed talking with younger people. As you know, I'm a little long in the tooth myself, but it's so refreshing to get the perspective of young people especially that are interested in our sport. And we hear so much nowadays about, is the sport dying? Is it, are the young people interested? Are they not interested anymore? So we got a guy today that is not only interested in coon hunting, he's interested in making coon hunting better, making it great again, as we may have heard someplace. But welcome to the Gone to the Dogs microphone, Caden Riley from Ball Ground, Georgia. How you doing, Caden?
I'm doing good, man. We're about the same state you are. It's pretty brutal up here. Coon hunters up here this time of year about shut it down. It's about 95, 96 degrees in the middle of the day.
Man. I spent a little bit of time in Georgia in the summertime, coming through there mainly on my way from my home in West Virginia down to Lakeland, Florida, where I was going to college. Georgia, I know Georgia's hotter than Florida. I think we have these sea breezes that blow across the peninsula here. And I'm on the West Coast, only a couple miles from the Gulf right now as I speak. But it's hot, don't get me wrong. It's plenty hot. It's humid and all the above. But, man, especially southeast Georgia, man, that was an oven. But you're up in the northwest part, aren't you?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're a little more northwest. Down in the southeast region, you got guys like Lennis, Ty Flanders, a couple other guys. I don't know how they bear it in the summertime, because I know it's brutal on us, so it's got to be twice as brutal on guys like that.
Well, I know. I think they just had a hunt here a couple of weeks ago in Hazelhurst. And I've hunted out of Hazelhurst in June. I think they had some legacy hunts, PKC events up there. The Marchands up there, Jarvis and Matt, and some of those people there been longtime PKC people. But, well, listen, Caden, what's it like around there where you live? Is it hilly, flat? What you got?
It's hilly. We're blessed that our spot's pretty flat for the most part. I mean, you can get in some hills, but we've got more of the flatter land around us. But there's some spots that can get pretty hilly and pretty rough. But we're just kind of accustomed to it. It's always funny whenever we go up to Illinois or something like that. People start talking about these rolling hills, and for us, it's like it's paradise for us whenever we go up there.
Yeah. Well, hats off to the hunters of the South.
Absolutely.
I first learned to do a little coon hunting, as I said, in the South when I was in college in Lakeland, Florida in the 60s. And, I learned all about the snakes and the gators and the skeeters that can carry you away and all of that stuff that really makes it a challenge, especially in summertime, to hunt in Florida. I don't recommend it. I mean, wintertime, it can be beautiful. It can, when the guys are fighting deep freeze and snow and ice, we've got some pretty good weather down here. But so you got some you're in the hill country. How far are you from Rome, Georgia?
About an hour from Rome, Georgia. I go over there and
Okay.
hunt a pretty good bit. We're about 55 minutes, an hour away. It's not
I
too
got
bad.
you. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, a lot of coon hunters in Georgia. Got a good
Especially
friend
by
over.
us.
Oh, are there? Yeah.
A ton.
Well, how's the coon population over there?
You're doing good if you're hunting, let's say you hunt a 90-minute pro classic. I'd say on average we're going to tree 2 to 3.
Well, that's pretty good. Yeah.
If you
That'll
can
work.
tree 2 singles in a hunt, you're going to win a lot more than you're going to lose. We don't have a bunch of coons. We got a few, but few and far between.
Well, I've noticed watching the videos and reading the results of some of the major events, the big PKC events and the pro sport events and so forth. The scores, 1 or 2 coons are usually all that's required to win a cast, especially 2 coons. You're looking pretty good, And of course, the dogs are scattered out. They're to themselves a lot more than back in the day when I started, when I was involved in competition hunting the most. The dogs were pack animals. We had most trees. We had a saying, get some of every tree and then get one by yourself, and that was a winning combination. But now that whole picture's changed.
Yeah, times have definitely changed, and you actually spend more time walking than you do really anything else in these hunts. Just 4 dogs, everybody's leash locked. It's just a very different era.
Well, I want to ask you straight up, man. You can answer this or not answer it.
Okay,
but
shoot.
Does it bug you when old guys like me talk about the good old days, talk about the days when we had big hunts, talk about the dogs back then and all? Is that irritating or is that interesting?
I'll tell you.
Straight up, man.
It's a little bit it bugs me and it's interesting. It bugs me because I wish that I got to hunt in that era whenever hunting was big. Like both my older brothers hunted whenever they were my age, and they talked about how whenever you go to school, everybody has a dog box. Whenever I roll into school, I'm the only one. People look at me and, what's that? So it's definitely a different era that I'm in, and I really enjoy, hunting with, what I'm given, but a part of me, wishes I could have been around whenever it was a lot more of a mainstream type of event.
I got you. Well, times change. Everything changes. And, I was very fortunate. Well, I started at the bottom of the totem pole, and then I was able to be involved in the sport, very closely involved with it at its height, and then I saw, the peaks and the valleys, and ultimately, we went through a turn for the last few years where circumstances out of our control, got involved. I'm sure you probably got some issues with deer leases and things like that where
Absolutely.
you live. Places to hunt, number one problem, urban sprawl, which contributes to that. The cities growing, spreading out, taking over the hunting territory. And then the fact that most kids, I'll ask you, were you raised in the country or in town? I mean,
I would say I wasn't like raised in the city, but I wasn't raised far out in the country. I was kind of in the suburbs. I was close to, pretty close to cities, 10, 15 minutes out, but far enough so where we could still, have our privacy and still feel like we were in the country.
Yeah. Well, back in the early days of coon hunting, when people took the magazines, that was the only source of information. Most people were in a rural setting, farm kids, and I heard so many stories of guys saying, I could have my folks drive me so and so miles and drop me off, and I could hunt all the way back home, and nobody cared that whether I had permission or not. They really didn't care that I hunted on their property. Well, as you know, it's not like that anymore. But so that all those things contributed to the decline in the number of coon hunters, and a big one was fur prices, because a lot of coon hunters all across the United States hunted for the fur, and because they could make a decent contribution to the Christmas shopping list every year, with when they sold their furs. And I enjoyed that too. When I lived in Michigan, I wouldn't ever consider myself a fur hunter really, but I did when the season was in. I harvested the coons and we skinned them out, and I chose just to freeze them and take them, thaw them out and take them to the buyer. Some guys put them on the wire stretchers and stretched them and fleshed them out and all, and they got a couple dollars more for their furs that way than I did. But fur harvesting was a big part of coon hunting back in the day. And so the decline in all of those things, led to the eventual decline of the number of coon hunters that we see at the events or we see at the coon clubs. Do you have a local club there where you live?
We actually, for not having a bunch of hunters, we have a ton of clubs. I've got probably 7, 8 clubs within an hour of me I could go to.
Yeah.
There's Dawsonville, there's our club at Rydell, there's Talking Rock, Rome, Shannon, Ella J, Chatsworth, and there's a couple others that I know. I'm missing. Gillsville's not too far. So we've got a bunch of clubs, and like you were talking about with the spots declining, I'd say that's the main issue we face is you have people who used to own these spots and then they start dying out or they start selling it to their kids or whoever, and the kids aren't as keen on letting their dad's buddy come over there and hunt and shoot coons or whatever. So whenever we try to put these big hunts on, that's our main stressor is, do we have the spots? And we've got to if we want to put a big hunt on, we got to have everybody on board and have everybody's spot to use if we want to have a big hunt for, have 32 dogs or however we want to do. That's about our max down here. That's if everybody is on board and ready to roll.
Well, that's it. Guides are everything. You don't have a place to turn those dogs loose, whether it's an hour, a 90-minute hunt or 2-hour hunt, whatever. You got to have a place to run those dogs for, that length of time. And, in a safe place, a place you're not going to get run out or arrested, a place where the dogs aren't going to get killed on the interstate highway. And all those things figure in, and the guide becomes such a vital part of the equation, and people don't understand the evolution of coon hunting, I don't think, because a lot of people, you still see some old timers like me say, oh, hunting and non-hunting judges, every cast ought to have a non-hunting judge. The problem with coon hunting is hunting judges and voting and all that. You need, if you had a warm body that was a qualified, physically fit individual to go out and judge a cast and perhaps guide that cast for 2 hours, and every club had an ample supply of those and places for those guys to go. Yeah, that's the best of all worlds. It's
Absolutely.
not reality.
It's fascinating. You kind of see slowly but surely over time, at least from the time I started, it kind of slowly wither away. You had the 2-hour cast, they kind of get taken down to 90 casts, just for earlies, and then they start doing 90 casts for late, and then they just do 90-minute casts across the board because they just don't have the spots for that. And then you start having, non-hunting judges pretty much everywhere whenever I started. And now you have hunting judges in the semifinals of a major event.
Yeah.
And it's just
Yeah.
slowly but surely over time, you see the evolution and the change, and not necessarily a good change, but it's just kind of what we're got to play with the cards we're dealt.
Well, absolutely. And it doesn't do any good to belabor the point that back in the day, but when you're old like me, the memories are about all you got left.
And
The memories are translate to stories and all. Go
it's
ahead.
very interesting whenever I hear somebody that's been around it a lot longer than I do talk about, why they started. You talk about fur trading and stuff like that. I've never even, heard of that for somebody around
Right.
my age or something like that. So, but now it's
Yeah.
like the purpose of it, it's not even to pleasure hunt for enjoyment anymore. For a lot of people, it's, can I have a dog that I can train to go win big money? And that's
Yeah.
been a change in coon hunting, is big money, big
Yeah.
money, big money. How can you win the most money in the least amount of times? That's why you see the state race kind of start dying out and getting substituted with these pro classics and with these, you can go to a hunt and win 40 grand in a night. It's just
Yeah,
crazy
it's
how we've
unreal.
seen
It
so
is
much money get pumped into this.
unreal. Yeah, I have friends that have earned, have won $100,000 hunt.
Yeah,
A
just
hundred
mind boggling.
grand hunting. That was just, uh, you know, you would. Well, I'm so old. We didn't even have a drug problem in society when I was young. I started to say you'd say that guy's on drugs if he told you he won $100,000, but we didn't even have that. But yeah, there has been quite an evolution, and we could talk an hour about that. About the things that I've seen. I was there when we went from a 3-hour hunt to a 2-hour hunt. I was there when I had to change the format for the UKC World Hunt to a zone system because we had so many dogs hunting on Wednesday night. We had our entire entry hunting on Wednesday night, and get this, not with just one non-hunting judge, but each cast had 2 non-hunting
Wow.
judges. And to put that in the woods on a Wednesday night when the guys had to get up and go to work the next day, we had dogs that weren't even getting turned loose for the first time until 2 o'clock in the morning. So it was crazy, and we realized that they had to make some changes. So I was there through all that.
And it's very
Yeah,
interesting whenever a lot of these, a lot of these people that have been around the sport for such a long time talk about stuff like a 3-hour cast, about 40, 50 people showing up for a little club hunt, because I've never seen any of that. I never got to see the 3-hour cast. I never got to see the crazy turnout at a club hunt. If you show up to a club and there's 6 dogs, you're like, holy cow, we've got a serious turnout tonight.
yeah,
Whereas back then that
get
was,
it on.
nothing. It's just a totally different environment and totally different
Yeah.
sport, really.
Well, sure. And then, I was there when we decided to do double headers,
Yeah.
and that was to help the clubs and to give the guys an additional opportunity to get another cast win. I was there when we decided to change the system to cast wins only. We had dogs that were required to have a first place overall for the whole hunt to be a night champion, and we had dogs that we had called had the second place blues. They'd have a dozen or more second place wins, but could never get the first. So all these things evolved out of uh, necessity. The idea of the 2-hour hunt came about because of guides, because of availability of hunting territory. One of the most famous coon hunters in the history of our sport is John Wick, who lived in Missouri and started Wick Outdoor Works, and quite an innovator and all. when we decided to go to the 2-hour hunt, he said, "What? If you're a coon hunter, you ought to want to hunt 4 hours instead of 3." But the idea, most of the hunters didn't realize that those guides were the thing that
Yeah, now
made.
now a 2 hour hunt takes people like us aback for a different reason. The chance to hunt a 2 hour hunt once a year. And most every pro
Yeah.
classic's about 90 minutes. Every big
Mm-hmm.
hunt you go to is about 90
Yeah.
minutes. And whenever you hear 2 hours, whereas, however many years ago, it's like, well, that's nothing. Now it's like, that's a totally different ballgame. It's like feeling like you're hunting all night whenever you get used
Yeah.
to hunting 60 minutes or 90 minutes.
Well, and when I look back, and I'm sure some of my contemporaries would feel the same way, we would say, "Why did we do that? Why did we put ourselves through 3 hours? You could go out and get a pretty decent score, maybe tree a couple coons, but keeping that score for 3
Absolutely.
hours was tough, man."
Yeah, a lot of casts now with the shortened cast. I've been on more casts decided in the first 5 minutes than not. Dog trees a coon out of the
Mm,
truck, 100 and 100, get out of the
mm,
country. That kind, especially down by us and thinner coons, wins. So that's
yeah,
another interesting thing is the constant evolution of what are you looking for in a dog? Are you looking for a
yeah.
dog that it's going to get a piece out of the truck? Are you looking for a dog that's going to be off to themselves all the time? Do you want a more silent dog that's going to tree two to their one? Or do you want a dog that has to get their mouth open, tree one, and then hopefully stay out of trouble and hold on? 'Cause
Well,
it's,
that's the ongoing conversation, and those again, of my age group and younger. Of course, I'm on the upper end of the scale of the spectrum, but there's a lot of talk that old things will eventually come back around full circle. They'll circle back, as Uncle Joe says, to because of the lack of territory, because of the inability to hunt 4 dogs that want to each go a mile their own way.
yeah,
And I'll be honest, I hunted. I lived in Michigan for 22 years, had wonderful coon hunting. I could not have hunted the dogs that we're hunting today on the spots that I had there. I mean, I couldn't have. I would have been Dogs have been crossing highways. They'd be
yeah, because it used to just be drop, tree coon, everybody gets a piece of it. Then you pick up, move, or whatever, and you have people coming in with 1,200 plus because you're
exactly.
making drop it, tree coon, move. And it's a totally different environment
Oh
now
yeah,
where it's
definitely.
people don't want theirs to get a piece out of the truck for a while. It started looping back to that. I've seen a little bit with the shortened time
Hmm.
of the hunts. You need every plus point you can possibly get. If you have a
Yep.
chance to tree for a quarter out of the truck, you better get that quarter, and then you better tree your own. Because if you go 2 coons down, especially where I live,
Yeah.
unless you have a serious coon dog, you might as well withdraw because it
No,
just rarely
that's
happens.
that's that's a hole that's going to be hard to climb out of. That's for sure. And having the videos and all, and hats off to people like Clayton Stark and Josh Michaelis and the boys at Pro Sport, Greg
They do a
Maynard,
great
those
job.
guys. Yeah, they bring this stuff into our homes. And we
Yes.
can sit there and we can look and we can see the picture of the night I watched the Lone Pine Lady. When that Joy Super Hunt, treat 3 singles, just absolutely every time John Strickland flipped her loose, she was in the dark. You may not hear from her for a while, but those dogs, the one thing that's happened for sure, in my view, is the dogs have become more accurate because we
Yes.
went through a time with the dogs, and especially in the popular Walker breed, that there was a lot of slick treeing going on, and there was criticisms toward PKC because in PKC you could win without actually seeing a coon.
Yeah.
You could win on circle points or on minus points on a bad night. Always maintained that, a plus tree, a coon in the tree is going to beat all the circle points and all the minus points in the world, But still, that has all changed, and the dogs, I believe, are more accurate. We can beat that horse to death too, but I believe they
I
are
think
not as
a
good.
reason for a lot of that is when you see dogs getting more independent in 90-minute casts, there's a real chance that you're only going to have time to walk to one of your dog's trees. You can't just waste a tree because you may have 4 dogs all treed, everybody's leash locked. This is the hunt. And if you don't have a coon right there, there is no second chance. There is no, I can get
Oh
another
yeah.
piece. We have another drop. That's
Mm-mm.
it. You got to make every second, every plus point, every tree count with the shortened hunt times. So there's a lot less margin for error.
Yeah, the nemesis of a coon hunter is that den tree, because now with
Absolutely.
the thermal imaging scopes and all that, we can basically, if they've got the coon, we can find it. Unless it's in a hollow, we may have
Yeah.
heat around the hole, but we got to see it. And it has changed tremendously, but it's like everything else. When I was a kid, Caden, I didn't have a screen that I could carry around with me and bring the world right into my little world instantly. I can get anything I want on that screen, and we didn't have anything like that at all. So things were so much more fundamental, just basic. And back in that day, and you alluded to this earlier, and I thought that was good, talking about, what guys know about their dogs nowadays and all. Back then we studied dogs. We listened to dogs. We learned every grunt, squeal, and wheeze that dog had, and because we spent time, we were concentrating on the dog. Most guys nowadays are concentrating on the screen when they're out
Absolutely.
there on the hunt, and so
Absolutely.
the whole sport has changed.
And you'll see guys that like your Michael Wards and your Dustin Weeds, some of the top tier
Sure.
handlers, they'll go to the super stakes and hunt 4 different dogs in 4 different nights and get all of them in. Because
Yeah.
with higher technology and stuff like that, you can get a dog and you can just kind of figure it out on the fly.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. You know, uh, I don't know. I'd like to stay positive, and I'd like to look at. I believe in positive reinforcement more than negative. But back, the elite handler series that Kane Stream Media and Joy is doing. To me, that's a misnomer because the guys really aren't that much of. They don't handle the dog anymore. And I know a lot of them are going to say, Fielder, what do you know? You never won 100 grand. Well, that is absolutely true.
Same here.
But I know that when all I got to do is I flip that dog out in the dark and I know he's going to go 3/4 to a mile. And if I can hear him, I'm going to ask the judge if he can hear him. If the judge says, yeah, I got him, then I've got everybody else is the other 3 points of the compass. And I can say, sit there and scratch my head and decide what I need on this tree. And, what are the odds? Do I even need to tree this dog or whatever? I've got all this time to decide what to do. Back in the day, back in the treeing contest day, you had to come off that tailgate with the hammer back,
Yes.
cocked and ready. Because, like you say, you get down a coon right off the bat. It's going to be tough to
And
catch
it's
up,
a totally different kind of, for me at least, what do I think of when I think of an elite handler? Because I've been on casts with guys that have won a crazy amount of money, and they are very good handlers. Like they know their dog and they know
Oh
all
yeah,
that, but a lot
yeah,
of it's
yeah. I
just
don't mean to totally diss these
no, no, no.
guys.
I'm not trying to do that at
I
all
don't.
either. And
No.
but what I think of is it's not actually their handler ability because dogs kind of with dogs being more independent, it takes a lot of the handler work out of it because it takes a lot of the calling contest and all that stuff. You rarely see a calling contest anymore, at least
No.
from my
No.
vantage point. But what those handlers, what makes them so good is the 6 nights a week they've hunted all night in preparation for that big hunt. That's what I think of when I think of an elite handler is somebody who's put in the work to train that dog to be a finely tuned machine. And it's
Yeah.
just that's every
Yeah.
time, extremely consistent. You look at dogs like Wipeout Z and some of these other dogs. I mean, every hunt they go to, they're getting in big money, because those
Mm-hmm.
guys are exceptional dog men, and they have found a way to get them to do what they want 24/7 for the most part.
Yeah.
So that's where I think they deserve a lot of the praise that they get, is because they've put in the work to make their dog, exactly how they like them. And it's just,
Well, no doubt.
you gotta respect that. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely, you do. And yeah, it's it's a beautiful thing to see. These dogs these elite dogs that, just like the Z dog you mentioned and others, um, that what the competition hound has become. The very first days, and I'm getting a tick in my throat here. Excuse me.
You're all right.
But back in the day, when the very first sets of night hunt rules or actually the first events right after World War II, you had subjective judging out there, a judge out there judging the dog that he liked the best, the one he liked the mouth the best, the one he thought was the coldest nosed, the one, that he felt drifted a track better than the others.
One that suited him.
The one that suited him precisely. And, that all has evolved, to the dogs of today are just, it doesn't take as many tools, though, to make, no, let me back that up. That's not the word I want to use. It doesn't take as many features today for someone to recognize a dog as being a coon dog as it did back in the old days. The dog had to have the big mouth. He had to have, the cold nose. He had to have a lot of things. Today, the dog basically needs to go hunting and find a coon and have a strong enough mouth that the judge can hear it and stay there until you get there. And those are the basic features that a dog has to have today.
And a lot of these ambush dogs, they've been kind of trained to just hunt as fast as they can, and they're not looking for a coon track, they're looking for a coon. There's just a totally different type of dog that you would categorize as a coon dog now to 50 years ago, and people will disagree and agree on what's better. And I think that's the fun part of this sport, is the sport's definitely changed. Some I think for the negative, some I think for the positive. But on a positive, like we were talking about with the screens, you can look at your phone and know the result of every hunt in real time. You don't have to wait for a magazine, and that's one of the ultimate evolutions of the sport.
And old guys, go ahead.
And you get a lot more of an insight to what the dog's doing. You can see how many miles an hour they're going. You can see how many barks a minute they are. You can see actually the path that they're taking. So you can see actually what your dog is doing like you're there. So there's been a lot of great improvements, for as much as we could reminisce that we wish some things were different. And I know I wish some things were different. There's a lot of things that I'm very grateful for and that keep the sport alive and keep the sport exciting for somebody like me.
Well, yeah, and especially, and I don't know if we mentioned this earlier on, and I think my listeners will be a bit amazed when I tell them this, if I haven't already. You're 19 years old.
Yes, sir.
And very, very much in tune with our sport. How did you get started coon hunting?
Well, I started when I was probably 6 or 7, just walking with my dad on cast, because my dad coon hunted and both my older brothers coon hunted. So I kind of was blessed enough to grow up around the sport and grow up around dogs and stuff like that. So I was always kind of just around it and knew about it. Then over time, I just walk with my dad a little more and start knowing what you need to do to win a cast, etc. And then when I was about 11, 12 years old is when I'd start, dabbling a little bit of the competitions. And that's when I really got hooked and got the adrenaline of, it's me and my dog against these other three guys and their dog, and that's something I really really enjoy. It's just the feeling of, are me and my dog better than these guys and their dog? So I was very blessed that I got to do this with my dad and do this with my brothers from a very young age. And for as young as I am, I feel like I've been around it for, just as long as everybody else.
Well, it certainly shows. And, I'm like you. I learned the sport from my dad. My brother was younger, so he came along later, 8 years after me. And of course, we hunted together some, but we had vastly different interests, back when we were kids. But my dad, was a consummate coon hunter. I mean, he a tree dog man and a bear hunter. So, I was his shadow, and that's how I developed the love for the sport. And what kind of dogs did your dad hunt?
4:53 p.m.
He's gone through about every type of dog through the years. By the time I started hunting, it was consistently walkers, but he talks about how, they used to have some really good plot dogs, some really good blue tick dogs, and it's fascinating to hear him talk about what was the popular breed at a certain point. Because now, I mean, 90% of the dogs are walker dogs. I mean, you see the occasional blue tick or something like that. But whenever my brothers were my age, they hunted consistently blue dogs, and that was the most popular breed in a lot of places at that time. So it was very fascinating to hear about, at this point in time, plots may have been the dominant breed, and then red bones may have been the dominant breed, and blue ticks may have been the dominant breed. Because I've only ever seen walker 95% of dogs, and you may see an occasional blue tick and an occasional red bone. Because I love red bones, because the movie Where the Red Fern Grows.
Oh, of course.
And I get excited every time I draw with one, even if I'd never heard of the dog before.
Everybody loves a red bone. Everybody
Absolutely.
that read Wilson Rawls' Where the Red Fern Grows loves a red bone.
Absolutely.
And I was fortunate in my part of the country in West Virginia to hunt with some guys that had some really good red dogs. They made a point to go out and buy good dogs from Missouri and different places, and bring them in. And so I hunted with a lot of red bones when I was younger. Of course, my dad being a plot man, that's what I hunted predominantly. What are your brothers' names, Caden?
My oldest brother, hang on, make sure I get their age right, because they're both a lot older than me. They're both about 20 years older than me, so they were in a totally different era of coon hunting than I was.
Oh, I got you.
But if I'm not mistaken, Justin is the oldest.
Okay.
And then Ricky is the person who I'm a little bit closer in age with, but they're both pretty good bit older than I am.
Is your dad still living?
He is. He still hunts with me, 3-4 nights a week.
And what's his name?
Rick.
Rick Riley. Okay, that's good.
And I was blessed with a great dad who not only cared enough to get me involved, but cared enough to eventually let me take the reins as the main handler, and he'd buy dogs that I wanted as opposed to what he wanted. And I don't think I realized till I got a little older just how selfless he's been in helping me grow up with this sport and learn to love this sport. So, and a lot of people don't get that opportunity to have a dad that wants them to have the opportunities and not himself. So I'm incredibly blessed to be able to do
I
this
heard
with my dad and my brothers.
I heard a very good sermon for Father's Day yesterday, and talking about things like that. How dads need to be engaged with their kids, but they also need to respect those kids' wishes and the things that they want to do, and get involved with them and find out what they like to do and all, and not just do as I say, So yes, indeed, you were fortunate, and I was too. I had that same type of dad, and unfortunately, a lot of kids don't. And what I would like to see, and then we're going to get around to the main reason that you're on the podcast today, and that's to talk about this project that you have there with the youth in Georgia. But I am just so, I don't know the word to use really. I am excited for the future of the sport. I'm also concerned for the future of the sport. I don't believe it's dying. I believe there's enough young people, certainly maybe not at the level that you have attained in your short life, but there's certainly a lot of young guys out there that are enjoying coon hunting. And I hope that they're enjoying it for the right way. I don't want the kids out there to just be like the kids growing up in the inner city saying, I'm going to play for the NBA. Therefore, I'm not going to go to school. I'm not going to worry about school. I'm not going to worry about my books. I'm not going to do anything. I'll just get to the playground and shoot hoops, learn to dunk the ball, and which is a total, pipe dream because very, very few of those kids ever do get to professional level.
Yeah, I mean, there's 300 NBA players in the world. There's however
Yeah.
many NFL players in the world, and the chances that you're one of them, it's great to dream, but
Yeah.
you gotta stay grounded in life
Yeah,
as much
and
as it's
that
good to
was
reach for the stars.
exactly. And I've said this before, and it's old news to my listeners. But when I spoke to the PKC youth at their national championship or world championship, I said, all you guys out there, or a lot of you, want to be professional coon hunters. And there's nothing wrong with that as a desire, but realistically, very, very, very few people make it to the status of being able to coon hunt for their living.
Absolutely. I
So
mean, there's
get,
maybe
yeah,
5 or 10 that I can think of because the same people in the big time winner circle tend to be the same people in the big time winner circle. You got
yeah. They're not,
Dustin
that's
Weed,
not
Oliver Lynn.
growing by leaps and
No,
bounds, is it?
no. I mean, you may occasionally have a new guy that pops in, but for the most part, it's the
Yeah,
same core group of guys.
exactly. And as I said, learn a trade or get that education. Then you get a good job, save your money. You can buy a new truck. You can buy a new fancy dog box. You can buy a $300-$400 light.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
then, and like most of us, have all that gear and have a $2 dog to
yeah.
holler at. But anyway, then you can do anything you want pretty much in this
Absolutely.
sport. You can enter the big hunts if you want,
And I'll kind of
whatever.
segue it back to kind of my upbringing with my dad, especially, and mom as well, because she was never, she wasn't out in the woods with me, but she was always very supportive of what I was doing and made sure that my clothes were washed and ready to roll by the time I got home and immediately go off to hunt. But they were always, we will let you hunt as much as you hunt, but you better have your grades, reasonable. And I don't, want you getting in trouble for doing dumb stuff out of school. I was just like every other high schooler. I did a couple things, that was ridiculous in hindsight, but this sport kept me out of a lot of trouble that I could have fallen into if I wasn't doing this. And they would always say, if you lose, shake the guy's hand. If you win, shake the guy's hand. Be a classy winner and a respectful loser. So I got afforded the opportunity to do what I love, but I had to take care of business first. And I had to make sure my grades were good and that I'm going to college now and all that
Good for
stuff.
you. Good for you, Caden. Well, that's it. Parenting pays. Good
Absolutely.
parenting pays big dividends. And I have several friends. I talk about him all the time. I know people probably get tired of it, but my friend Randy Smith, the Lone Pine guy up in
Yes, I know
Pennsylvania,
Randy Smith.
his boys are doing very well in life, and it's very, very important. Well, your kudos to your parents; they've done an awesome job. Now,
They're an outstanding duo of parents. I could not be more blessed to have them as my mom and dad.
yeah,
Absolutely.
well, good for you, brother. Okay. The reason you and I got together is I believe that I maybe first heard from you talking about this youth series that you have going on
Yes, sir.
there in the state of Georgia. And, before I mess it all up, I just want you to tell the listeners, what it is, um, how have come to this point with this thing. Um, Anything, that you can share with the listeners about this. Certainly the why. Why did you want to get involved in something like this, and how it's going, and what your goals are, and so forth. Just kind of fill us in. This is called the Peach. Give me the full
The Peach
name.
State Shootout. Peach State Shootout Youth Series.
All right, and it is through PKC, correct?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's PKC
All right,
sanctioned. Yes, sir.
right. And you, as I understand it, contacted or became acquainted with Chris, the director of the PKC Youth Program.
I did.
How do you pronounce his last name?
Freiberger, if I'm not mistaken. I'm probably
Freiberger.
wrong on that, but I'm
Yeah,
somewhere in the ballpark.
He's one of those Iowa farmers. I think he's probably got a good German name
Yeah, I'm
there.
sure it has a little less country than how I'm pronouncing it.
Yeah.
But I'm in the ballpark.
What is it, and what's going on with it? Just fill us in.
Well, I'll start with kind of pitching the idea of I think I was hunting one night because we had my nephew with me. He's only 4 or 5 years old. He's just now starting. And I was thinking, I guess my whole purpose in hunting can be boiled down to I don't want to be the last generation that does it. I want this around for him whenever he gets my age. I want this around for my future kids whenever they get old enough to start doing this. So I started thinking about some stuff that we could do, and I was like, well, I'll just reach out to the big man Chris because he's done an outstanding job for the youth, and they just had their youth nationals, which is a massive success. And congratulations to all those kids. And I reached out to him and I go, I really want to get the youth of Georgia involved because we didn't have much youth down here to my knowledge. And I looked on the races and standings for PKC youth. There was one person from Georgia who had won any money in the youth for this entire year so far.
Mm.
I was like, it shocked me, but it didn't really because I just got out of the youth program last year. Last year was my final year. And I think back in 2020, 2021 or something like that, I went to the Georgia State Youth Championship. There's 3 dogs.
Oh,
That's it.
wow.
And there wasn't much excitement around the youth. I was really the only one. Me and Justin Perryman, who lived in more South Georgia, one of the all-time youth leaders. It was pretty much just me and him. There weren't a lot of younger kids that were involved with it. So I reached out to Chris and I said, what do you think? What do you think is most likely to, because it was a hard mission because we were trying to get a group of kids that we didn't even know existed yet excited in this thing. And he sent me a text back and he goes, well, there's been this model that they've been doing in Missouri and Illinois. I think it's still going on in Missouri. I think Illinois may have wrapped theirs up. But what he pitched to me was something like 6 to 8 doubleheader $35 hunts, and you can take the top 9, the top 12, however many you want, to a championship hunt. You can decide, do you want it based off money, based off cast wins, anything like that. But that was kind of the rough model he sent me. And I thought about it, and I was like, I really think this could get some grassroots youth out and showing up. So I reached out to how many people here? I reached out to Curtis Todd to have the first one. I reached out to Nathan Tilson, to Nicholas Brown, to Brett Denny, to Lamar Pettyjohn, and to Jeff Dollar. I said, would y'all be willing to have some of these hunts so we can try to get 8 doubleheaders? Because if we're ever going to have youth in Georgia, this is the best way to do it. And they were all rock stars about it. They were all fully on board. They sent me dates. They sent me what would work best for them. So I reached back out to Chris and I go, we're on board. We got a full team that's ready to try our best to see what we can do here. And he got the ad made same day. He was excited about it, sent me the ad, and that's what we're at now. So we ended up on the format of 8 doubleheader youth hunts, and I'm taking the top 9 to a championship in Shannon, Georgia on October 5th. So if you win, let's say 2 casts and you're 8th in the standings, you'll be able to hunt in that championship hunt. So we're excited about it. We've had some really good turnouts. I won't lie to you, it was a little slow the first couple times because, like we talked about not all that long ago, it's hard to reinvent the wheel and to pitch a new idea to these people and be like, trust me, it's going to work. Whenever you have these hunts that have history and legacy to them, people are much more inclined to come out.
Oh, yeah.
So we had a little bit of a slower turnout for the first 2, but in Chatsworth, we had 11 dogs early and 9 dogs late. We're expecting a similar turnout this Friday at our club in Rydell. So we're picking up some traction and we're seeing a difference. That's the exciting thing, is we're really starting to see these kids get excited for this.
Awesome. Well, the Rydell hunt will take place just prior to this podcast being released.
Yes, sir.
I think we'll be releasing on the 23rd, if I'm not mistaken. So the listeners out there, kids, you've got one coming up on the 29th in Shellman, right?
Yes, sir.
And then the 12th of July in Somerville, Georgia. The 20th of July in Carrollton. August 16th in Shellman. So that will conclude the series then, right? With the Shellman.
Yeah. Well, that will be the final date to try to get yourself in the top 9 for that championship.
So we're
hunt.
trying to get into the top 9 dogs. It says here the earnings leaders from the qualifying events will qualify for the championship. One of the most important things that I did, I think, when I was with PKC, and I was with that organization for about 7 years, and I had a lot of fun, and I was editor of Pro Hound magazine there at time, and did a lot of things with the events and all. But man, when the kids came to town, to Aurora, to the tennis center, back in those days, we did the Youth World and then the World Hunt. Where actually the Youth World was the last 2 days of the World Hunt, and they were all together, which I can see why they separated them and so forth. But it was such a rush for me when all those kids came to town on like Friday or maybe Thursday night. They started rolling in with their parents and their dogs and all. And PKC really did it up with a nice banquet for them at a local restaurant. And they have a speaker. And I was privileged to do that out at Salem once, and I really enjoyed doing that.
That's awesome.
But one of the highlights I always remember of a 33-year career in working with the registries was thinking, these kids have really worked hard this year. And we know what the earnings are for every one of these kids that are here that are qualified. Let's get that list. And when they're through with their banquet and all, let's give them all a number that they appear on that list. And tell them to line up at the back door of the tennis center with their dog. And as we're going to call those kids in with their dogs right up in front of the stage on the carpet, and they're going to get to walk up there and make a circle around with their dogs. And I thought, man, we need something to really make this thing go. At that time, country singer George Strait had a song out that said, "Dad, this must be the best day of my life." I can't talk about this without getting teared up. We played that song, and those kids walked in with their dogs, and their names were read off. Caden Riley, the dog's name, the amount of earnings. The parents are on the front row. The cameras are flashing. Everybody and people are applauding. I said, man, I can't do anything that's more important than this. I cannot do anything in the coon hunting world that's more important than this. So anyway, without getting emotional, I greatly applaud what you're doing,
And
Caden.
I think
And
that I'm going to try to get to this without getting emotional as well. Back to what you were saying, there is nothing more important than the youth of our sport and trying to create something special for them. And I've
yeah,
been at a few of these hunts so far. I've been at two out of three of them. And I got to judge some casts, and I got to see the excitement on these kids' faces, win or lose. And it kind of
correct.
reminded me why I do this, why I love it so much. Because you get lost up in, well, did I win? Did I lose? And have I this amount of money won? But whenever you're out there and you're getting to see these kids compete, a lot of them for the first
Oh
time,
yeah.
and I'll tell you, it's a really special thing about this hunt so far is I've actually got the standings right here. If you don't mind me,
Oh, let's do. Absolutely.
so we've had 7 winners so far out of the possible 9 through our 3 hunts, and I've actually got the standings right here. First place so far is Gregory Mitchell, who doubled up last week at Chatsworth. He's got 121. So he right now is in line because we've got 2 special trophies, one for first place in the standings and one for the winner of the championship hunt. So if it ended today, Gregory would be the winner of the standings and that trophy as well. Obviously, he'd have to keep it going throughout the 8 hunts. Second is Cooper Fields. This kid, if I could stop for a minute and give this kid a special shout out, he has been at every single one of these hunts and has hunted every round so far. And
Okay,
if he
if we
was
could
not,
back up just a little bit, do we have any
yes.
other information about the kids, like their dog's name or where they're
see,
from or anything like that?
Gregory's over by us, kind of around Rydell area. He
Okay.
was hunting his dad's dog named Sue last week.
Okay.
I don't know if he'll continue with that dog because they can change if they want, but he'd be smart to considering he doubled up.
Sounds
He did
good.
pretty good last week.
Okay, well, go ahead. And then this young man that's been at all of them, you say?
This young man named Cooper, he's been hunting a dog named Trip, and he lives a little more kind of closer to Dawsonville type area, a little bit away from me. But this kid has been at every single hunt. I've seen him win with grace. I've seen him lose with grace. And if he wasn't there at those first 2 hunts, we wouldn't have had a hunt. Because we had a total of 20 entries last week when you combine early and late round, which is really good. But for the first 2 hunts, we had a total entry of 4.
Yeah.
So he was there whenever we were struggling to get this thing rolling. So he deserves a big, big shout out. And
Absolutely.
whoever raised him did it the right way. That kid is extremely respectful, and he's really what coon hunting's all about. He's a great sportsman, and he puts in the work. So I'll be hoping to see him in the final 9.
Oh, yeah.
I'm thinking we will.
And what's his name again?
Cooper Fields.
Okay. Way to go,
So
Cooper. Great job.
we got Case Martin, another incredible young man, very respectful. And I've seen him. He doubled up at Gillsville, and he lost both last week. And I'll tell you, his demeanor did not change between last week and Gillsville. He was an exceptional guy to hunt with, shook everybody's hand, and he did it the right way.
Yeah.
And I wish I was like him whenever I was younger, because for as much as I loved it, I was also guilty of putting a little bit too much stock in did I win or did I lose. And if I won, I had a great time. If I lost, I didn't have quite a great of a time. But that kid understands that sometimes it's your night and sometimes it's not. And I think that's a lesson that a lot of us need to take.
Absolutely. And that doesn't matter how old you are, that never changes. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
Tied for 4th and 5th, we've got Gage Baldwin and Houston Childers. I got the chance to meet both these young men, but again, extremely respectful, extremely polite, extremely excited to have the opportunity to be in some of these hunts. 6th was Kanan Hogan with $54. He got his first cast win last week. And then 7th place was Jay Saylor, who was actually our first cast winner of this whole thing in the early round of what was the first, I'm trying to remember the location we had here for the first time, but the hunt in southeast Georgia, it'll come to my head in a minute. But he was our very first winner. And something that's been really special about this hunt so far is all 7 of these young men, that was their first ever cast win. And that is just, that makes it all worth it.
Oh, yeah. That first hunt
Absolutely
would have been
makes it all
in
worth it.
Claxton, I believe.
Claxton, that's it.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was Claxton or Hazelhurst or Shellman or one of those areas.
Well, awesome, man. And it sounds like you're getting the cream of the crop there in Georgia, these youngsters.
We're getting some incredible handlers and some incredible young men. And it's been an honor to watch them compete so far, and I look forward to seeing them compete through the final 9.
Well, that's awesome. Now, did you say you've selected the location for your finals yet or not?
I have Shannon, Georgia. It is Matt Evans' club on October 5th. That should be a Saturday. And that's going to be a really, really awesome day. We're going to have a lot of stuff planned. You actually inspired me earlier to do something. Whenever you're talking about listing each of the kids and what they had won and giving them each their chance to walk up and have their moment, we're going to do something like that there. Each kid lined up and have their moment with their dogs to get their picture took by themselves and have their moment that they deserve.
I promise you'll get as much out of it as they do. It's just awesome to watch those kids,
It's a special experience, and you really realize whenever you get to see that everything else in the sport, it's fun, but that's the important stuff. Yeah. That's the stuff that lasts a lifetime, is giving those kids that memory that they'll pass on to the next generation.
Absolutely.
That is so important.
In the podcast that's running this week, as you and I are recording, I'm talking to Fred Moran, an octogenarian coon hunter from Pennsylvania, 87 years old. And he and I talk about remembering the first trophy that we won in the night hunt. Yeah. I do. I remember it as well as it was yesterday. I can remember when they called my name. I can remember walking my way up through all that room full of coon hunters and getting my trophy and walking back to my dad, and I'm sure I was grinning from ear to ear, and it was about 12 inches tall. I got 6th place. It was called the Southeastern Ohio Championship, and there were, believe it or not, 106 dogs that night. But I think I rubbed all the brass off that back then they made the trophies, the figures, the treeing dog were made of metal, cast metal, and they were gold plated, or looked. I'm sure I rubbed part of that off on the way back home. Looking at that.
I'm sure you were.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great thing, Caden. Well, what about? It's too soon to tell, but do you see this going forward? Do you think this has got a future for an annual thing in Georgia?
Well, I've gone back and forth on it. I really hope it does. In order for this thing to work, it's all pretty much donation based, because most of the pot for PKC Youth Division goes to the Youth World or the Youth Nationals or something like that. So the way we raise the money to do not only payout, but to do sweatshirts and hats for each of the final 9, as well as 2 really nice trophies and a dinner and banquet for the final 9, was all raised by some very generous people and sponsors.
Yeah. People have to step up.
Yeah, people have to step up. And for as much as I came up with the idea, this would not have been anything if I didn't have the help that I had. This is a true team effort from top to bottom, and it takes everybody. Well, I hope so. We'll just have to see.
Well, I certainly want to commit to having you back on as this thing it gets down to the wire here, and we certainly want to recognize those people who, unless they've asked not to be, that have made this possible for you as we go forward. I think it's a great thing you're doing, and I really applaud it, and encourage our listeners got a couple bucks you don't know what to do with, just message me. I'll get the information how you can hook up with Caden, and you guys can do something for the youth, not just for the youth of Georgia, but for the whole country. The sport of coon hunting needs to go forward. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's something that can change lives for kids, especially kids that are, in what is it they call it when they say kids in the inner cities or so forth are they're apt to get in trouble. There's a term there, but I can't think what it is.
And I can promise you, if I wasn't hunting, I would have found the trouble.
Oh, yeah.
Because I have very much an addictive personality, an all-in personality. I'm all into what I'm doing.
Yeah, yeah.
And hunting allowed me to be all in on something productive.
My buddy, Keston Jesse, who's about 10 years older than you, young man, family man, and he says the same thing, that coon hunting at a young age, kept him. And I just can't get him in the hunt. He's got a dog that could win. Oh, my gosh, could he win. But he just I don't know why. He said, I'm just a coon hunter. I don't need to do that. But at any rate,
sounds like I need his number.
Yeah, right.
I can win right now.
There's a lot of people could use Keston's dog.
Yeah,
I'll tell you that. Yeah. All right, Caden Riley, it's been a pleasure, man, to have you on the podcast. I apologize for all the growling and coughing and all that I'm doing, but that's life for me right now. I hope it's going to get better. But
it will. It will.
We're going to have you back as this thing progresses and keep the listeners abreast of what's going on. But want to thank you for what you're doing to promote our sport.
I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to promote this thing. And it, like we talked about, it takes everybody from top to bottom. If you're listening right now, if you're an adult and you want to come and judge one of these hunts or just be a helping hand, reach out to me. We are always welcoming new people that want to help out the youth, because there is nothing more important in our sport than helping out the youth and watching these kids compete. And it's an experience you'll never forget.
Absolutely.
So I strongly encourage people who want to get involved, reach out to me. I am not a hard person to talk to.
Obviously.
And we want you involved. We want everybody involved.
Well, you couldn't have
really
said
fun.
it any better, Caden. I have judged youth casts, and it is a trip. Except when you get those 16-year-old kids that walk you in the ground.
We were, one quick funny story. We were, last week at the early round, I was judging a preteen cast. I don't think I felt any older than I did in this moment. We actually went into sudden death because nobody had even made a tree yet. And this one boy's dog gets treated way through the country, and we're in some thick stuff. And I was so focused on getting through all the briars and stuff like that, I turned around to make sure there were, no youth behind me struggling. I turn around, and I'm the last one. I'm the last one of the line. All these youth are trucking to go see what this dog has. Yeah. I was like, oh, Lord, I'm starting to slow down a little bit.
I know that feeling. Of course, it's been a few years since I judged the youth cast, but I remember that well. But seeing those kids compete and handle their dogs and all, and they're good. These kids are good, man. They know what they're doing, and it's just a real joy. Okay, that's going to do it for this week, folks. Once again, my guest is Caden Riley from Ball Ground, Georgia. Caden is spearheading the Peach State Classic? Shootout, that's right. In PKC, it's got to be a classic or a shootout.
Oh, yeah, it's one of the two.
We're going to tell you more about it as time goes by. Caden, have a great week, whatever you're up to. I hope it's you stay nice and cool there. It's a great state of Georgia.
Cool as we can.
Yeah. Well, folks, we're going to wrap it up for this week. And this is Steve Fielder for Caden Riley saying if you don't have anything else to do, just go to the dogs. All right. Good night, folks.